we've entered your mind. That's what it feels like.
If you don't know where you want to go or who you want to be, you eventually just float around and you eventually crash. I promised the people that they're number one, but I promised my wife that they're going to be number one. So that's a dilemma.
Before we jump into this episode, I'd like to invite you to join this community to hear more interviews that will help you become happier, healthier, and more healed. All I want you to do is click on the subscribe button. I love your support. It's incredible to see all your comments, and we're just getting started. I can't wait to go on this journey with you. Thank you so much for subscribing. It means the world to me.
The best-selling author and host.
The #1 health and wellness podcast.
On Purpose with Shetty.
I feel like we've entered your mind. That's what it feels like when you enter this room, like all these aspects of yourself. I was wondering, what's your earliest childhood memory that you think defines the person you are today? I heard somewhere you mentioned your father made you earn your breakfast. And I was thinking, what does that feel like? What does that mean?
I really don't know exactly what it was that gave me the drive or gave me the ability to visualize my goals in order. But I think it was a combination of things, of growing up after the Second World War in 1947. I was born, and to grow up with no food, with starvation and famine, and my mother going around what they call hamstering, which means begging at various different farmers for food, so she had food for the children. So all of that, I think, had an impact and a strict upbringing. My father was very strict. We were hit many times and punished for not doing the things the way they thought we should do things. We had to earn breakfast, like you said. We had to do push-ups and sit-ups and compete, knee bends and all this stuff, running around the house in order to be allowed to have breakfast. So I think all of that contributed, and also I think having the military around, the British military that was, because they occupied that area of Austria. They came always around with their tanks and with their big trucks and everything. And I think that gave me the fascination of, becoming a tank driver myself, and I went into the Austrian army. Ever since then, I have had a fascination with big cars, big trucks, with tanks and stuff like that. And I now have the tank that I drove in the military, I now have over here in Los Angeles. And it's at the Melody Ranch, where they have a lot of various different military vehicles, and they do the upkeep, and they drive it like once a month, and especially with after-school kids that are staying in school in the afternoons and so on. So we have a lot of fun with that.
Do you still drive it?
Yeah, I drive it every month.
Oh, wow.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. But that's why I have Hummers, the big military trucks and cars and SUVs and the Oshkosh and all of this. It's a certain craziness that never leaves you, And boys and their toys, right?
Yeah, absolutely. You said somewhere as well that you felt like your father was maybe struggling with some post-traumatic stress disorder, like he had that energy that kind of came through onto you guys.
Well, my father was a very complicated guy. Obviously, I never really got to know him that well. By the time I left, it was like I was 18 years old. I went in the military, then I moved to Munich, then I moved from Munich to America. So I really was not home. I wish the day I could have a conversation with him, because I'm much smarter now. I'm much more interested in various different issues like that, what makes someone tick, what makes someone, happy and suffer, whatever. So in those days, we didn't talk about any of that, So but he was complicated because he was a victim of the Second World War, meaning that he was dragged into the war, became a soldier, a Nazi officer, was shot at in Stalingrad, or Leningrad, I should say, and he was, buried under rubble of buildings that collapsed on top of him for 3 days, and then he had back surgeries, and then he was shipped back home to Austria, and that actually probably what saved him, because he got out of Russia just on time before the whole thing collapsed.
Wow.
And so it created a certain kind of a thing. He had malaria, so he was suffering from malaria. He was suffering from shrapnels moving around in his body. He was depressed, obviously, that they lost the war in the first place. So that must have had an impact on all these men, because everyone around me when I grew up was kind of drinking. And so people only drink when they're really unhappy, or you drink a glass of wine, like I sometimes do, but not to get drunk, per se, like they did. So there was a lot of drinking going on, a lot of violence going on, hitting the kids, not just my dad hitting me or my brother, but the neighbor hit his kids and the other neighbor hit it. I mean, as a matter of fact, a kind of a parent-teachers day will be when the parents come into the classroom. They will go up to the teacher, they talk for a few minutes, and then they go to their kid in the classroom and smack them. But every parent was doing that. It was just the wildest kind of a thing.
That's insane.
It would be great for comedy today, I think, because now I have to laugh about it, because people are all kind of like laughing about it, because we knew, like when my dad came in, he then had this look, first he talked to the teacher, then all of a sudden was this look towards me. Then he would just come over and boom, we smack you. Then we walk out, and then some old lady would come in with a walking cane, and she was the grandmother of one of the kids that was sitting next to me, and she would go to the teacher. And then she would walk over with her cane, and she'd take her cane and smack the kid over the head with the cane. And so this was normal. Wow. So you understand, that's what I'm saying. It was such a different way of upbringing than maybe you had, or that the kids have today, or that my kids had, where there was always love and affection for them. Yes, there was discipline, but it was all done in a measured way and not with hitting and stuff like that. So but I think all of this had an impact on my the way I viewed the world, and my drive to get out of Austria, and to come to America, and to get into bodybuilding and all those kind of things.
What was the most intense part of your involvement in the military? What was the most intense experience you had there? Obviously, there was this experience at home and at school, as you just said, but...
I think that the military, even though when I went through it, it was really tough, but I have to say that when I look back at it, I recommend it very strongly for any young man or woman, as far as that goes, to go through that, because you learn how to be tough. You get up at 5 a.m, you run for an hour, then you do your basic training, crawling on all fours and with a gun in your hand and shooting, and learning how to drive motorcycles and cars and trucks and tanks. You learn about leadership, but you also learn simple things like how to iron your shirt, how to sew on buttons, how to iron your pants, how to brush your shoes, how to clean your shoes, clean belt buckles and all this. So you become kind of self-sufficient, and it gives you, I think, a certain amount of confidence that I don't need to be babied by anybody. I can take care, I can cook, which you learn there, the basic foods. As a matter of fact, we made scrambled eggs on top of the tank, because the back of the motor would be so hot.
Wow.
So we just put the eggs on top and just scrambled it there and ate it off the tank, dirty as it was, right? So, but I mean, so you feel kind of like, I can handle food, I can handle ironing my own stuff, I can handle washing my own stuff. I don't need anybody to do those kind of stupid chores. I can do it myself, and I feel good doing it myself. So there's a lot of things like that you learn in the Army. It just gives you a certain base where you don't get afraid of anything. You feel like, I've gone through all kinds of hell now with the military, they make sure of that. And so I think that's really terrific. But I remember there were times that were really tough. Like, for instance, if you make a mistake, they will have you open up the hatch that is underneath your seat, and where the driver's seat is of the tank, and you open up that hatch and it falls out. And then they have you crawl out of that hole, and then then crawl under the tank in the mud, and with your uniform on and everything. And then you have to climb up the back of the tank, up the turret, down the turret, back to your driver's seat, and then out that hole again. And they do that like 50 times. So by the time you do it, it's like hours later, and you literally collapse. You're so exhausted from all this stuff. So there's punishments like that were really, really tough. So I would not wish that on anybody, to be honest with you. I mean, I could handle it, but I think I could handle it because I was 18 years old. And, you're very, very tough when you're 18. You can handle just about anything, You have the endurance and the strength. And I was in the middle of my weightlifting and bodybuilding career. So I was also strong, but it was strong-willed also. So to me, it was all it was good, but it was tough.
Yeah. What was your first, I know that you've talked about how you wanted to get out of Austria, you wanted to get away, but what was your first glimpse of America? What was your first experience of the United States that you had?
The first experience was, I was competing in Florida, in Miami. So to me, Miami was the first experience, really. Arriving in New York, changing planes, and then flying to Miami. I came from London to New York, and then from New York to Miami. That to me was the first experience, the high rises, the beautiful hotels, the water, the boats. Everyone had a boat there. The same said, Jesus, can you believe that? I mean, everyone, they have an apartment on at the canal, at the waterway, and then they have a boat. And they were just all cruising around. And we were invited, we bodybuilders that were competing in the competition, we were invited on boat rides. There was this one bodybuilder that had a boat for 10 people. So we were going around and we saw how much fun they had, how well people lived, how happy they were. To me, that was a really interesting experience. Unlike the experience when I came to California, because I felt okay, I'm coming to California, and I'm going to see all the things that made me want to come here. Muscle Beach. But Muscle Beach by that time was closed. They closed it in the 60s. And so there was no Muscle Beach per se. Then Gold's Gym was not as big as I thought it's going to be. The buildings, when you look around out here, we're in Venice right now, it's still today very low buildings compared to the high rises in New York. So I thought that there would be high rises here also, Los Angeles, high rises. And then when my friends took me to Hollywood, they tried to convince me, this is Hollywood. I mean, look at this. And I looked around and I just couldn't see anything, right? So I thought there would be studios left and right of Hollywood Boulevard. There would be studios. There would be Paramount Studios, and there would be Sony, and then there would be, Columbia, Disney, and Warner Brothers, and all of the studios would be lined up left and right with hotels and luxury and all. And I go down to Hollywood Boulevard, and it was like a bunch of homeless people running around, and weirdos, and drug addicts, and hippies. And that's what I saw, and tourists, So I said to myself, this is Hollywood? They said, well, you have to understand, this is daytime. At night, it really lights up. Then I said, well, why don't you bring me here at night when it really lights up? So they took me at night, and it was also very disappointing. There was a few lights and a few billboards. But, I came from London, right? So but at that point, I've been several times to London because I was competing in bodybuilding in London, and I started my bodybuilding career there. So I saw Piccadilly Square, and I saw lights. Mm-hmm. I mean, I saw action. It was staggering. That really blew me away.
Yeah.
And then driving on those double-decker buses and the transportation with the subway or the tube, whatever they call underground, whatever they call it in England. And all of this to me, the airport, the Heathrow airport and all this, that really blew me away. But when I came to America, when I came to Los Angeles, I had a vision it would be like that, but it wasn't. And so I was very, very disappointed in the beginning until I got used to it. And until I understood that this is earthquake country, that you don't build high rises, because they would collapse. Later on, as time went on, they figured out the technology to put them on rollers or on major tires or something so that it moves, so they don't collapse. But I mean, I learned to understand all of that later on. But the first thing was a shock to me in a negative way. But then when I got used to Los Angeles, and when I got used to the gym and used to the members and the kindness of the American people and the sweetness of the bodybuilders, that would invite me on Thanksgiving when I didn't even know what Thanksgiving was.
Yeah.
And they would invite me, a stranger like me, to their home for Thanksgiving dinner. Or they would come and show up at my apartment with silverware because I didn't have any.
Yeah.
With dishes, with blankets, pillowcases, bed sheets. And I remember this one girl gave me like a radio, a wooden radio for my end table next to the bed, which I still have next to my bed today.
Wow.
So, because I wanted to keep that, because it was like, it symbolizes, whenever I look at that radio, it symbolizes the generosity of the American people and how it was kind of like included when I moved over here and all of that. So there was a lot of interesting lessons that I've learned right away when I came over here. The difference between cultures and all that, between Austrians and Germans and British and the Americans and all that.
Yeah, I think a lot of what you just said about first coming to Hollywood, I think it's very common when people go to Hollywood Boulevard and have a very glamorous view of what it might be, but it isn't. And what you were reminding me of just now is just this idea of how everyone has like dreams and visions of what something might be, and then when you experience it, you get a sense of how you view it through your own eyes. And for me, though, what I'm fascinated by is who was your first ever bodybuilding coach, and do you remember your first ever tournament? How did it go?
Yeah, no, there was a fellow by the name of Kurt Manul, who was Mr. Austria. Now you have to imagine when you're like 14 years old, like I was, and 15, and Mr. Austria was like, it's a big star.
Yeah.
He came out to that lake where I grew up. It was like a lake where there was on weekends like 3,000-4,000 people around that lake, lying in the grass and on blankets, and then swimming in that lake. And it was kind of a muddy kind of a lake. And he came out there and he looked like God. He was very good friends with the swimming coach, the guy that kind of took care of everything there at the lake. And they were working out. And they were inviting me to work out with them. So to me, that was kind of the first experience where someone kind of dragged me in and inspired me. And I said, oh my God, can you imagine looking like that? And he, if he wanted it or not, happened to be very good. Because he said to me, he says, well, Arnold, in 5 years, you could look like me. And I was visualizing right away, oh my God, can you believe that if I could look like that and I'm Mr. Austria? Yeah. And I said, that was like major. And I just felt like this is almost kind of my new dad. Yeah. He was 32 years old and he became kind of like a mentor. He invited me then, first of all, I realized that they invited always these athletes out to the lake, shot putters and javelin throwers and weightlifters and boxers, bodybuilders. I mean, all kinds of athletes. They all would work out together and have a good time. And we kids were kind of like hanging out with them. Yeah. And every so often we would work out with them. So I got my real early inspiration that way. And then I went down to the club, to the weightlifting club. I started working out and started really become religious about it. It was like, this was my new life. And I started having visions, very clear visions of being a Mr. Austria. Then there were pictures of the Mr. Europe contest. So I visualized myself being in the Mr. Europe contest and winning. And then I saw pictures of Reg Park, which is a British bodybuilder who then subsequently later on moved to South Africa, married a South African woman by the name of Marianne, and they created a family in South Africa. So that became kind of my idol. And I saw pictures of him winning Mr. Universe, in London. And so that was my new vision. So I started really creating through this guys a vision. But that vision was so vivid, so clear, that I felt like all I had to do now is just follow through with the work. So let me now find out what needs to be done. And so I read about Reg Park. How did he train? He trained like 4 or 5 hours a day. And he did so many sets, so many reps. And this is the exercises he did the bench press, the incline press, the curl, the shoulders presses, and the this and that. And I just wrote everything down, and I started following his routine. And I was absolutely convinced that I will be another Reg Park. And so that's how I really developed my first rule that I always talk about to success is you got to have a very clear vision of where you want to go. Because if you don't have that, you're just floating around. And so, I was very fortunate that I created that vision. I was very fortunate that there was not the side kind of things going on. We didn't have a phone in our house. We didn't have a television in our house. At that time, there were no iPhones, there were no iPads, there was no computer. There was just really, you had all the time in the world to think and to really just sit quietly and to just visualize. And I always say that I feel sorry for kids today that are spending hours and hours on that iPhone or an iPad or computer, and they don't give themselves that chance to just settle back and to just figure out what do they want to do or who do they want to be. And so this is why I think that I made that kind of the rule number one is, visualize. And I always compare it to that you can have the best airplane in the world with the most advanced pilot. But if he doesn't know where to go, he's just going to fly around until it crashes. And that's what happens to you in life. If you don't know where you want to go and who you want to be, you eventually just float around and you eventually crash. And that's why a lot of people are unhappy. They take drugs, or they drink, or the suicide rates. I think a lot of it has to do because people really don't have as much of a purpose and the mission and the vision and all of the things that drove me from the time I was like 15 years old. It was very clear which direction I want to go.
Yeah, I love that you start the book with that rule of have a clear vision, because when you hear about your childhood, it's not easy, it's tough, it's rough, it's harsh. There's so many internal challenges at home, there's external challenges, there's limitations that you're in a country that's obviously just survived a world war. It almost looks like there is no space to have vision.
That's right.
Like someone could argue that, Arnold, how are you having a vision in this space? I think what's really interesting is sometimes we feel helpless because of where we're born, where we're from, our parenting structure, our surroundings. Some people struggle to have a vision because they say, well, how can I have a vision? Look where I am. And then some other people, they can't have a vision because when they see someone like Reg Park or Mr. Austria in your example, what they see is, envy. I wish I had that, why does he have that? Or maybe, I should have that. So I think we live in these two worlds where we either feel helpless or sometimes we feel envious and egotistical about visions. How did you allow yourself, or how did you develop that ability that even though around you, there wasn't that much success, there was more stress, but you saw Mr. Austria and were able to do that? Have you ever figured out what that was compared to everyone else you grew up around?
I just can tell you I was very unhappy.
Yeah.
I was unhappy with the reality of what was around me. The tough parents and the lack of food, and others had steaks. We didn't have the money for that. As a matter of fact, we never ate meat during the week. Now, today they would say, this is really good because you were vegan as a kid, but it was more because of a lack of money. So we didn't have anything. So everywhere I looked. So I think to me, the only way really was, in order to be happy, is to create my own world and to visualize. You know, that's why people sometimes read a lot, because they want to escape into another story, or the day they watch movies to go and to see another, to escape into another story and all this stuff. For me, that wasn't available. In the first movie I saw was like when I was like 9 or 10 years old. So it was not the common thing in the village where I grew up to go to movies. And I remember there was this collapsible kind of a seat. I just fell right down on the floor, because I had never even heard of a collapsible seat. That you have to fold it down. Yeah. So I folded it down, then waited a little bit, and then of course it went back up again, and I went right down on the floor. So because of that world, that negative world, I had to kind of create my own world. So I was just always daydreaming of wonderful things. So I developed that art, and it put a smile on my face. Yeah. So clearly, when I then saw Mr. Austria or Mr. Universe, and I saw these guys and saw photographs of it, and read about it in the magazines, I created my vision, and I saw in that vision myself being up on that stage, and I saw myself, you know, people screaming around me, and screaming, Arnold, Arnold, and all this crazy stuff. It was all insane, crazy stuff, stuff that I never shared in those days with anybody, because they would have put me in a mental institution, right? So, I mean, I just remember that I was sitting in a classroom in school. I was like 13 years old, 14 years old. The teacher would be where you are now, in front of me, teaching. And I would just slowly look off to the side, out the window. I saw these green trees. And then all of a sudden I started seeing things. And I had a smile. It's just this wonderful stuff that I saw. And all of a sudden I had a chalk landed on my forehead. So the teacher threw a chalk at me, kind of saying, hey, I'm here. I'm getting paid to teach you, to teach this class of 30. Why are you looking out the window? Now, I couldn't even articulate that this, what you're teaching here, doesn't really blow up my skirt. It's like, it's not like kind of something that I'm interested in. What I'm interested in is what I just saw when I looked out there, and I saw myself on that stage in London at the Mr. Universe contest, you know, and it's things like that. So I think that with me, visualizing became a normal thing, and I never really knew that I had really a very special ability to visualize and to connect the dots, to say to myself, well, if I can see it, then it must be a reality. And I can make it a reality. So for me, the vision became a reality. So it was only then a matter of following through with the work to get there. And this is why in the book, one of the things I talk about is work your ass off. Because every single time when I had a vision about anything, I had to work my ass off. But it was pleasure. See, that is the great thing. When you go to work and you know exactly why you're working, then it becomes fun, a challenge. It's entertaining sometimes. And when you read that 78% of the American people hate their jobs, now think about that. I mean, that must be so depressing that you go, let's say you're working in some car plant and you do like, you know, kind of the same work, putting a window into a car over and over, you know, 50 times a day, every day, all year long for 30 years. I mean, it's tough. And so this is why it's so important that we really have a clear vision so that you know where to go, and that wherever it is, if it is to become a great auto mechanic, or if it is to become a great teacher, or a politician, or a high-tech engineer, whatever it is, but have a vision, and then you go after that and you shoot for it, because now every step of the way is going to be great. You know, when you pick a doctor, Let's say, I want to be a doctor. I want to be a surgeon. A kid says to himself at the age of 15, well, from that point on, he knows all the classes he has to take already in high school. And then when he goes to college, he knows which university to go, what kind of classes he has to take, and then how long will it take him, and all of this stuff. So there's a reason for going to school rather than, oh, my parents told me that I have to go to college, and you just go to fulfill this obligation, but there's no goal.
Yeah.
That's what happens to a majority of kids today. They don't have the goal. And that's why they end up being one of the 78% that are unhappy with their jobs, and they wish they could change jobs, but then it's too late, because now you've created a family and you have to pay for your rent for the apartment, and you have to put food on the table, you have to provide money for the kids and for your wife and for the family and all this stuff. So it's really tough. So that's why so many people are really always looking for an answer or searching for an answer. How can I improve my life? How can I make it a little bit better and all this stuff? And this is why I did the book, be useful.
I'm glad that you put it in that order, though, because I think for everyone who's listening and watching, a lot of people will say, I do work hard. I'm working my ass off. I'm working my socks off. I'm like doing everything I can. But I think what's really important is that in the book, you start with have a clear vision.
Yeah.
And I agree. I think there are a lot of people who are working really, really hard. And it's almost like if that hard work was channeled toward a clear vision, as you say, then that hard work pays off.
Right.
Because otherwise, a lot of people just working hard, getting stressed, putting on pressure, but there isn't that vision. Have you found, what was the greatest sacrifice you ever made in your life, do you think? And what was the reward that you gained from it? What was the biggest sacrifice?
That is really the question. Is it really a sacrifice?
Because you love it.
Exactly. To me, it's also a real question is the word discipline. Because I tell you, I felt many times that I'm not a disciplined person. But people always insist and say, oh, it must take so much discipline every day to get up. And every day you were in the gym at 7 in the morning and you worked at the 9:30 in the morning. And then you went to college after that. And then you went this and this and you worked on construction. I was like looking forward to getting up in the morning and looking forward driving to the gym and working out 2.5 hours and then going down to the beach and taking a run in the deep sand and getting some cardio work done and all this stuff. I said, I was looking forward to it. It was not like, oh my God, I have to do another workout. Yes, you do that when, for instance, sometimes people go to the gym and the doctor says, you should go to the gym and you should work out because otherwise, I see some problems coming up, high cholesterol and body fat and this and that, and you're going to go and wipe out, 10 years younger than you want to. If there's ever the right time to wipe out. But I mean, in any case, so that person you can see in the gym is there and they do their reps and they do their sets and they're not really into it. You can see there's no life in their eyes. You know what I'm saying? Where it's like they grab the weight and they just do those sets and they get the pump and they feel good and they put the weights down and get the next heavier weight and they do the set. And so that's really fun. But that person is kind of like a vegetable in a way. They just cruise around in the gym. They sit on the life cycle and they just pedal away. And when you say to them, I say, so why do you work out? They have no answer. Then eventually they say, well, to be honest with you, the doctor told me that I should get in shape. That's better for my health. To bring my blood pressure down and my cholesterol down and my body fat down and all this. So they're not really, so I say to them always, I said, what you should do is you should just pick a goal that you can chase. They would say, like, what? I said, well, how much do you weigh? I'm weighing 190 pounds and I want to lower my body weight. I said, well, why don't you pick a goal like you want to go down to 170? And it is now March, and by August, when you go to the beach, you're going to have a slimmer waist, less body fat, and you look leaner, and you can be proud of your body. I said, pick that goal. Oh, that's a good idea. I said, write it down, and then write down the sets you have to do to get you there, and the amount of reps you have to do, and the amount of life cycle that you have to run. and regular bicycling and running that you have to write all of this down and then you mark it off. Every day you mark it off. That's what I did. To me, there was really that feedback that I see a line being crossed. That means one was said, was done. It was a satisfying kind of a thing. The line was crossed off. The next line was crossed off. And so I tell people that, and then they just say, oh my God, this is, yeah, I'm going to do that. That's such a great idea. Then they come back to me like a few months later and they say, this worked.
Oh,
it was unbelievable. It worked. It was fantastic. And it really gave me a purpose. You see, so that's what it's why it's so important to have a purpose when you do things, to have a clear vision when you do things, because then you don't have to look at it kind of like I have to be really disciplined to do that, or I have to make certain sacrifices to do that, because then it just drags you into that direction and you just do the work. So that's what I think is always that. But clearly there were sacrifices. Like let me just give you one example.
Yeah, please.
What do you think it's like when you go and you run for governor and you promise the people that you are going to be my number one priority? Now you win. Now you have to do the work. But now you come home and your kids are crying on the dinner table when you come home. And Daddy, you didn't come to my recital on Monday. Daddy, you didn't come to my football practice on Tuesday. Daddy, you promised me that you come into the school and you take me to school. You didn't this week. So that is devastating when the kids are crying and complaining and you say to yourself, I promised the people that they're number one, but I also promised my family. I promised my wife when we had the first child that they're going to be number one. So that's a dilemma. Now you're in a dilemma, and now you have to make certain sacrifices. And I had to make certain sacrifices when it comes to spending time with my family, where my wife had to pick up the slacks, and she had to do the extra work. So there were sacrifices made that were painful sometimes. When you see your kids crying, that's painful. And then it's your fault. But that's the situation you're in. And you put yourself in this situation. You had a choice to run for governor or not to run for governor, right? If I would have continued with my movie business, those kids were in heaven because they were in a movie. In my makeup trailer, they were watching me getting made up as the Terminator or for any of those kind of movies. They were in my motorhome and they were doing their homework in the afternoon there. They brought their friends with them. So that was fun. Now all of a sudden they go up to Sacramento and everyone is running around with a suit and with a tie. And they come to me and says, Dad, what is this? What did you do? Why are you having this job? Now they were like 11, 12 years old. And they said, why do you have this job now? I say, everyone has a suit and a tie, and everyone looks really serious, and they all attack you. They say bad things about you. I say, well, this is the way it's in politics. I say, as soon as you run, first you have like a 80% popularity, and then as soon as you run, your popularity goes down to 50% because 50% of the other side, the other party.
Yeah.
So you run as a Republican, since 50% of the Democrats, they hate you, or they don't like you. And then the Republicans like you, but they don't even like you because they say, he's doing too socially liberal, whatever. So my campaign manager always said, this is Arnold, 20% of the people hate their mother, so don't worry about someone hating you. It's just the way it is in politics, So anyway, so you have to make sacrifices like that. Imagine a sacrifice you have to take when you come to this country. I mean, you know what it's like. You leave everything behind. My friends, my parents, my relatives, everything that was around me that was kind of like a sure thing. I had a job after the military that I could go to continue on the job that I did as a salesman. I had all of this and I left all this for uncertainty because there was no certainty coming to America. There was Joe Weider that said, I'm going to help you. I find your apartment. I find your car. Yes, there were some people that helped a lot. He's the one that gave me the airline ticket to come to America and all this stuff. Joe Weider is the publisher of the muscle magazines. He has passed away in the meantime, but I mean, he was like the guru of bodybuilding. He created bodybuilding. The federation was created by his brother, Ben Weider, and Joe had the endless amount of magazines and distribution company for weight equipment for food supplements and all that. So he brought me here. So there was some help like this. But I mean, I walked away from all of this comfort to come to America. So yet there were major, major sacrifices like that. But I really never looked at it in that way, because I just said to myself, I want to go to America. I want to go and be there and work my way up to become the greatest bodybuilder of all times. And that's, we are talking about one of the other rules.
Yes.
Is in my book, which is that to shoot for big goals.
Yeah, never think small.
Is just as much energy or as little energy as shooting for a little goal. It's just as much hassle when you have a little goal. Like, say, if I would say, I want to be Mr. Austria. Well, that's as much working out than working out for Mr. Europe or Mr. Universe. So, I mean, you might as well just continue on and just say, okay, all I have to do now, the difference really is that you have to become a real professional. You have to know how to pose. You have to have the right tan. You have to take the right food supplements. You have to eat the right food. You have to really fine tune. You have to get the definition. It's not just the size of the body. So the higher up you go, the more complicated it gets to win. And but I said to myself, to me, to shoot for the goal of being a world champion, it's just as easy as shooting for a goal of being Mr. Austria, being the Austrian champion. So I just went all out, and not only to win the world championships in bodybuilding, but to go beyond Reg Park, who won at that point 3 Mr. Universe titles, to go beyond that and to say, I want to actually become the greatest bodybuilder of all time. All times. That was my goal. And so that's why I had to come to America, where there is Muscle Beach, where there's Gold's Gym, where all the champions work out together, where there's Joe Weider that can be helpful and publish you and put you on the cover of his magazines, and all of this, so to do the promotion, the campaign, the training, the marketing of bodybuilding and all that. So to me, this was really the only way to go, is to come to Los Angeles. And on top of it, Los Angeles is known for Hollywood. And this is my next career. So I always say to myself, the word Reg Park, I saw him in Hercules movies. So can you believe that this guy won Mr. Universe 3 times, and then he was discovered in Rome, in Cinecittà. And they saw him there and they said, oh my God, you are Hercules.
Hercules, yeah.
We're going to send you to acting classes, into acting school, and you're going to play Hercules. And then Steve Reeves did the same thing, who was another Mr. Universe from 1950. Yeah, Steve Reeves from 1950, Reg Park 1951. So both of them became Hercules. Then there was many other bodybuilders that they did Hercules movies, or those gladiator movies and muscle movies and stuff like that in the 60s, that became very famous. But I mean, I said to myself, if Reg Park could get into movies, maybe when I go to America and I become the world's greatest bodybuilder, then they would ask me to go into movies. And so was the idea. So to me, it was natural. I said to myself, there's Hollywood in Los Angeles, there's Muscle Beach in Los Angeles, there's Gold's Gym in Los Angeles, there's Joe Weider here. This is perfect. I have to go there. That was the reason why I went here.
Did you ever have a plan B?
I never believed in plan B, because I felt kind of like one of the rules we have in my book is never listen to the naysayers.
Yeah.
To me, I always felt kind of like every single dream of mine, and of course, I have to say they were outrageous dreams. So people said, this is stupid.
Yeah.
What is the matter with you? That would never happen. I mean, your dream is to go to America. What do you think, they're waiting for you over there? I mean, there are plenty of people over there. They have over 300 million in population. They don't need any more. And so that was the kind of saying, you would never make it to America. And they don't need you. So no. Impossible. When I said I want to be a world champion in bodybuilding, that was impossible. When I said I want to get into movies, that was impossible. So it was always impossible. So I felt that we can go and defend ourselves from that and just not listen to the naysayers. But if I start having a plan B, then all of a sudden I'm becoming, in a way, a naysayer to myself.
Wow, yeah, true.
So because that means now that I'm saying, well, maybe this isn't working out. And if it's not working out, we should have a plan B. So to me, this is the most dangerous of all of the naysayers, is me saying no, and it's impossible maybe to myself. So therefore, I felt the best way of handling that is not to have a safety net and not to have a plan B. That I'm at risk, and therefore I have to be at all times on the edge and a 10, so I don't fall where I would need a safety net.
Yeah.
This is the way I dealt with that issue. Never have a plan B. Always go all out with my plan and really put 100% of effort into it in order to really achieve it. And I just always believed in my goals. I mean, I remember when I ran for governor, and people said, "You're crazy." I mean, this great Davis is going to take you out, and then if he doesn't, Bustamante is the lieutenant governor. These are all seasoned politicians. You don't know anything about politics and blah, blah, blah. Why don't you run first for mayor, and why don't you do this? No. I was very clear with my vision. I could see myself as the governor because I felt that the people in California were very upset at the regular politicians. I mean, they were always talking about what they know and how smart they are and how they're going to fix things. In the meantime, we had a $30 billion deficit. In the meantime, we had blackouts. In the meantime, they were handing out driver's license to illegal immigrants, or what they call undocumented immigrants, and everything that the people were against and the people didn't like, the Indian gaming tribes were gambling and having gambling casinos, but not paying taxes. So they were mad about that. So I would just tell people, if I become governor, I would change all that. And the workers' compensation costs for businesses in California, I would cut that in half. That's why so many businesses left California, because of the cost of doing business. So I said, I would cut that in half. And so this is exactly, people bought in because I was talking believable. I mean, I could put my hand in the fire for the people to do the things that I promised. Those things will be done. And I said I would do most of those things before breakfast the first day when I'm in office. So that always sounded good. So in any case, but the people bought in. And I remember that when President Bush and those guys called me from the White House, and they said, "You want the president to come out to campaign for you?" I said, No. I said, because then it becomes kind of a political thing, but the Republicans are helping each other. And then Gray Davis is going to have out, Bill Clinton and Al Gore and John Kerry and, all of those guys. And that's exactly what happened. He had all those people come out, campaign for him. And I told all of my guys, no, don't come out. Because I wanted to be the David and not the Goliath. I want to be the underdog and kind of say, look, this is just between me and the voters. So that was my vision. Not a political strategy vision, but that was my vision. I said, I have to be the person that is by himself, that is kind of crawling up there, and that is communicating with the voters. I don't need someone to speak for me or anything like that. Yes, you have your communications director and all that stuff, but I didn't need to have President Bush come out and speak for me. I didn't have to have the vice president come out to speak for me or anything like this. I wanted this to be between me and the thing, and it worked. People figured it out, that I'm out there, that I'm promising them, and they bought into it, and I won. And so this is why it is so important that you have really a 100% belief and not having to go and say, my plan B, if this doesn't work, is I'm going to go back to movies. Well, that will unfold anyway. But let's first go all out and not have a plan B. This is the thing. And so I've never had a plan B.
Yeah, no, really, really great clarity again of just determination that there's no other options. And I like what you said, or what really connected with me at least, is this idea of how you can become your own naysayer.
Right.
That having a plan B is you talking yourself out of why you should go all in.
Or you're already putting it on kind of shaky grounds.
Yes.
The goal.
Yeah, you're already setting yourself up.
You already say, well, if well, wait a minute. If you say if, that means there's a possibility in your mind this could fail, and that is a dangerous road to go.
Yeah.
I think.
I agree. Where did you go when a few moments ago you were talking about how the kids are upset when you're governor? Obviously, public gets upset when someone's in a position of power. You've got all these people who rely on you personally and professionally. And you even said to yourself, like, I couldn't really talk about it. No one can really understand that. What did you do at that time? Where did you go for connection and understanding and even getting to talk to yourself at that time?
Well, you just have to find, a compromise. So what you then do is you just say, okay, I'm going to go and spend an extra day at home. So because it was the choice being in Los Angeles a lot of days or to be in Sacramento. Mm-hmm. So I spent 4 days a week in Sacramento and 3 days a week in Los Angeles. And I decided then to spend another day in Los Angeles and to go to this school recital or to go to some kind of a practice sessions of, my kid playing football or baseball or something like that. And to go to those things, so to figure out a way. And it didn't take anything away from my public service, but it gave a little bit more time, face time for the kids. And, it really is absolutely crucial for the kids, not just to see their mom coming to school, but they need their dad also. And so that's exactly what I did. And I totally understood. I talked to my wife about it. But like I said, on the end, she was really the one that was the powerhouse in the family, because she spent, I would say, 80% of the time with the kids. And I did 20% because I was stuck in Sacramento. And even though she worked also as first lady and she was in Sacramento, but she spent much more time with the kids. And luckily, when you have a good partner, then you can do a lot of those things. Alone, I couldn't have done it.
Yeah, definitely. And you mentioned, I think, in the documentary too, that if there was an Oscars for divorces, then you should get one because of how even in that circumstance, you both have found a way to let the kindness be, even the way you're speaking about the family today.
Because it's kind of, the most important thing is, it's one thing if you suffer through it. It's another thing if your wife suffers through it. But the kids are really totally innocent bystanders, right? So we had to my wife and I were very good in working together so the kids don't really feel a bump in the road and that things are smooth for them. And again, it's important. I mean, I saw it very clearly that it can be done, and we did it. And we were very happy with the outcome. We're very, very proud of our kids. I mean, they're extraordinary.
Yeah, I had the fortune of interviewing Catherine probably a couple of years ago when her book came out.
Yeah.
So I got to have some interaction with her and Maria, and I've had several interactions too. And
Catherine is a carbon copy of Maria, and Maria is a carbon copy of Eunice, and Eunice is a carbon copy of Rose Kennedy. So this is how it goes down. I mean, it's like they're like clones. They're exactly, you know exactly what you get from them. I mean, it's like, but Catherine, I mean, I'm so proud of her, of what a woman she has become, and so is with Christina, with my other daughter, and the boys. It's a lot of fun. I never thought that having kids would be that much fun. I said, because in the beginning, I always thought about, the work that it would take, to take them to school and to go to their recitals and to the practices and to teach them and to have the swimming coach over and, you have to just be part of everything. You have to teach them, from just swimming to running to football to water skiing, snow skiing. You have to just be on top of everything. And also having animals. Because one of the most important things with kids is if you have the space, that is. If you're in a little tiny apartment, then maybe a cat is good. But I mean, normally it's kind of like good when you have dogs, or when you have, like, we have a miniature pony, we had horses, a donkey, Lulu, the miniature donkey, we had pigs. Now I have a pig again, even though the kids are not there anymore, but it never stops. But I mean, so, because the kids grow up with these animals, and you teach them how to take care of them. This is extremely important, because they have to have a sense of responsibility. You can't just say, oh, I would like to have a rabbit, or I would like to have a pig. Yeah, but you take care of it. And so that's what they've learned. Yeah.
One of the lessons in your book is sell, sell, sell. And we just talked about it now when you were talking about almost selling yourself to become governor. There's a certain promotion, marketing approach to galvanizing people to get behind you. And I think the word sales and selling has a lot of people have a negative connotation or a difficulty with selling because it almost feels like there has to be something fake about it. I've always found that if you're proud of what you're selling, if you really believe in it, then it's easier to sell it. But generally people have a challenge with like the word sell. But you say one of your lessons is sell, sell, sell. So walk us through how you were able to, I mean, obviously even all the movies, the franchises you've created, it requires promotion, it requires selling. And of course they were highly entertaining, but tell us what you learned about how to sell effectively, but also authentically.
Yeah, first of all, I think you're totally right.
Yeah.
That the word selling sometimes comes off sleazy. So that's why I can call it promotion or communicating or whatever you call it. And the point of it is that you can have the best product in the world. But if no one knows about it, what's the point of the product? I mean, I'd like to know, for instance, if there is someone out there that does a heart surgery or valve replacement without having to have open heart surgery.
Yeah.
But if I don't know, I would just go to the hospital and say, I want to have an open heart surgery and I want to get the valve replaced. But if I know, because they promoted it well, I can go now and call that expert and then go. So this is why I think it's so important. So to me, I learned the art of selling way back when I was 15 years old, when I was in trade school and when I was working for this lumber yard kind of construction company, hardware store. It was like a combination of things. We were taught how to sell the merchandise. And then sometimes we were able to follow the guy that is the boss. And he one time said to me, he says, Arnold, why don't you help me here? And he would talk to the customer. And I realized quickly that there was something odd going on, that all of a sudden his attention focused on the wife. There was this couple, they wanted to have some, tiles for the bathroom and for the kitchen. And he first talked to him and how much money does he want to spend and all this stuff, what colors. And all. Then all of a sudden he ended up only talking to the woman. So he says, so what did you learn? I say, well, I learned that you were really very clear about all the advantages and disadvantages of the various different tiles and the various different colors. He says, yeah, that's right. But that's one dimension. But what else? I said, I don't know. He says, did you see how I shifted and my attention went from the husband to the wife? I said, yeah, what was that all about? And he says, well, I realized that he had really no interest in the tiles, what color it should be, what type, real tiles or fake tiles or what. It was her vision. And it was her desire to have new tiles. And he just went along with it because he's the husband, he's the provider of the family, he makes the money, she didn't make the money, but she had a very clear vision of what she wanted. So I shifted my focus because I realized that she is the customer, not him. And you got to go and be able to reach the customer. And this is why I started talking to her more. It was, and then he just out of courtesy said to him, so what do you think? Should I deliver it on Thursday? He says, yeah, whenever. He would just always say, well, whatever. And she says, Friday is better because Friday my husband is at home in the afternoon, so he can help me carrying all this stuff up to the second floor and blah, blah. So she was much more precise. And so that's why he spent most of his time with that. So those are the things that I've learned when I was selling. And how important it is to actually let the people know that you have this product. I went right after that. A few years later, I went to Munich, and I, after the military, served there as a trainer in a bodybuilding gym. And we had I remember 280 members. And there was another gym in Munich that had 500 members. And that guy, his name was Reinhard Smolana. He was Mr. Europe. And I was, at this point, not Mr. Europe yet. I was junior Mr. Europe, but not Mr. Europe yet. And I didn't compete in any other international competitions. So I was training really hard. I said to myself, if I could go to the Mr. Universe contest and I compete and I do really well, I could maybe outdo him. And so this is what I did. I trained really hard for months. And then in September was the Mr. Universe, end of September, Mr. Universe contest. And I happened to place second, which they call runner-up.
Yes.
So this was, my goal at that point was to be in the top 6 because I was 19 years old. Here was second place winner. So when I came back from London to Munich, I ran around on a construction site with just a bathing suit on, like a lunatic. And everyone was dressed up in their suits and everything. And they said, what is this guy doing? I was walking around on a construction site and greeting people and all this stuff, hoping that some press will show up because there's this crazy guy running around in the cold weather with just a little bathing suit. And sure enough, newspaper showed up, a photographer showed up, and they asked me afterwards, why are you running around like that? And I said, well, I want to make sure that my gymnasium, Universal Gym, is in a newspaper. I said, that's it. Okay, well, let's take a good shot. Why don't you take this saw over there and you help this guy with the construction site, doing some cutting of the wood and stuff. And then we would create some pictures that are really funny. And they put it in the newspaper the next day. And it says, Schwarzenegger just came back from Mr. Universe, was runner-up in the Mr. Universe contest, which makes him the biggest title holder in Germany.
Wow.
So I made it clear that they know that. Not that the Mr. Europe is bigger, but that the second in the Mr. Universe is the biggest title holder. So that was like, now that story was in the paper. And we had, within no time, we had beaten him with the gymnasium membership and had over 500. And his was low. And I remember him calling. As a matter of fact, I worked out myself in his gym because we worked out together, because it's much better when you have a good training partner that is a champion himself. And we were laughing about it. So then, just to show you how important promotion is, so then he started secretly posting posters all over the city on construction sites. Smolana Gym, we train you, you become a champion, more energy, healthier body, this and that, and all this stuff. So when I saw the posters, I said, I'm going to go and create posters myself for the gym. So we created posters, and then I followed him with the car. And he was going at 10 o'clock at night on Friday, putting the posters up there. And then after you put the poster up with the glue, he then left. And then I put my poster on top of his wet glue because I came right after him. So I didn't wait until it dries. Went after him and glued my poster on top of him. And so this was kind of like the poster war amongst the gym owners. It was hilarious. But it was all about selling memberships because I knew that my salary comes and is getting paid from those monies that are coming in from the members. And so I wanted to be able to buy food supplements. I wanted to be able to buy myself good food and the trips to those various different competitions. In order, so it was very important that our membership goes up, that we are very successful. But it's all about selling. And so when I came to America, there was in my blood now, selling and communicating and promoting. So when I did I remember my book promotion, Arnold, the Education of a Bodybuilder, Simon & Schuster wanted to have it, sell 100,000 copies. So I said, well, I want to have it on the bestseller list. Arnold, no bodybuilding magazine was ever on the bestseller list. Forget about that. I said, let's give it a shot. How many cities do we go and promote the book? And he says, well, here's 6 cities I suggest. And so I said to him, why don't we go to 30 cities? Are you crazy? So he was laughing, but then I put together a schedule and for 30 cities in 30 days. And I was crisscrossing America I was going from 90-degree temperature in Miami up to Minnesota that was like below zero. So it was literally like 100-degree temperature differences in the same day. So this is how much I crisscrossed this country, and it was absolutely fantastic. We won a bestseller list. We sold 250,000 hardcovers or whatever it was, and it was like a total smash as a bodybuilding and fitness book.
Wow.
And so this is again, over and over again, I've seen that not just the willpower to succeed, but to be able to sell and to communicate and to be out and to actually talk about it. I think it's important to let people know you don't have to force the issue into the hard sell where you talk about it all the time, buy my book and buy this and buy that. This is the only way you're going to stay healthy and all this stuff. No, you don't have to do that. You just in an indirect way. But the key thing is that when people walk away from the interview, that they know about it. And this is also very important. Like, for instance, when we were doing Johnny Carson's show, I was learning at that time about bridging, where you bridge from a specific subject that someone asks you to then what you want to talk about. It's an art, And so my friend was vice president of Nationwide Insurance, and he told me about it. He said that he has taken many seminars about the promotion, because insurance business is very important that you promote and that you communicate and publicize and all this. And so I asked him about it, and he told me, he says, well, bridging is one of the most important things. So he taught me about that, and of course I was on Johnny Carson's show promoting Conan the Barbarian, just to give you an example. And Johnny Carson says to me, he says, so Arno, this is really unbelievable. He says, how long have you been working out? When did you start and why did you start working out? So I said to myself, okay, if I answer this question in a thorough way, even when I sell one ticket to go to see Conan. So I said, I got to go and bridge. And so what I did was I answered very briefly, because you have to, otherwise it sounds stupid if you talk about something else. But I would say, Johnny, it's a very good question. I say, I was 15, but I tell you, at 15, I did not know that at one time it is absolutely essential to have this kind of a body. He says, imagine Conan the Barbarian, the way Frank Frazetta painted Conan the Barbarian with the muscles and with the determination and all of this stuff. And there was no one around to do this character. That's why they've never filmed Conan. I said, now here I come, Mr. Universe body, and now I do Conan the Barbarian. And it is now believable, because people, when they see me handle the sword and killing all these people, I said, it's believable because they see the muscles. So I said, not in my wildest dreams at 15 did I think that one day those muscles will be so important in the movies and stuff like that. And so I sold now, I answered this question, I started with 15, but I sold Conan the Barbarian, the muscles and the fight scenes, and you then would add on. I said, there was this one scene with the camera, and I punched out the camera, and blah, blah, blah. So you then just spice it up. And so this is what, selling and communicating is all about. I was very fortunate that my head was in that so much, because when I was governor, that is the most important thing, to communicate to the people, because otherwise how do you get their vote? Right? So you need the people. You need to go and say, here's why we need infrastructure. We need to rebuild our roads. We need to build extra freeways, extra highways, extra tunnels and bridges and on-ramps and off-ramps. I say, why? Because you want to go to your kids' school and watch them play football. You don't want to be late 2 hours. I say, how many people get stuck in traffic? Everyone will be raising their hands. I say, well, let's eliminate it. Let's terminate this problem. Let's build more roads. Vote yes on Proposition 1A. So I explained it to them, not just talking about infrastructure, which politicians normally do, but people don't know what infrastructure is. I cannot expect them to know what infrastructure is. Is it the electric lines, the power lines? Is it the plumbing? Is it the sewage? Is it the building freeways? Is it building high-speed rail? What is infrastructure? Well, all of this is infrastructure, but so now you have to explain it to people by saying, do you ever get stuck in traffic? Of course, everyone does. So then you say, well, let's build more freeways. let's go and vote for this so they don't get stuck in traffic. So then they know, it moves the traffic faster because we get stuck in traffic. So this is why communicating, selling. This is what it's about.
Oh, those are great stories, great examples. Yeah, I love those. I hope everyone who's listening and watching can latch on and get some insights for their own challenges. Those are great. And I love that you're going all the way from governor through to the gym, and the story of you running around in your swimsuit is brilliant. There was one story actually that aligns with that selling point that Will Smith tells of meeting you. And he said that he walked into a room and it was you, Sylvester Stallone, and Jean-Claude Van Damme. And you were the three that inspired him to go international. So he said that when he spoke to you three, you all said to him that the market in the USA is huge, but until you become a global superstar, you're not really a superstar.
Right.
And so in the same way as you were saying you were going around the 30 cities of the US, you've done a lot of world touring as well for the movies.
Well, I explained to him that when I got in the movies and talking about Conan the Barbarian was my first big international movie. Again, the studio said, we're going to send you to Cannes, to the film festivals, and then we're going to go and send you to London and maybe to Rome and definitely to Japan. So I said, well, why are we only going to 4 places? They said, well, this is where the big markets are. Germany, but the Germans always come to England when we do the press junkets in England. So the Germans are taken care of. Then we have the Japanese. We go to Japan, and you're going to do a big promotion there. And then America. Those are the 3 big markets. So I said, okay, if this are the 3 big markets, I said, when I look at the globe today, I see so many other potential markets. I say, you don't want to build those.
Yeah.
You don't want to create those. So I told Will Smith, I said, the story. I told him, I'm going to go to France. I'm going to go to England, to Germany, to Holland, to Finland, to Sweden, to Norway. I want to go all over the place. I want to go to the Middle East. I want to go to Africa. I want to go to Australia. I want to go all over the place. They said, you're nuts. I said, so, because I was thinking about 2 things. One is to promote the movie, and the other one is I have to promote myself because most people know me as a bodybuilder, not as an actor. So this is a good opportunity for me to go around the world for the next month and to promote myself as, well, I'm doing movies.
Yeah.
And this is my first big movie, is Conan the Barbarian. So it was like a great opportunity. So I told him that, I said, so I slowly started building an international market. And the studios were extremely pleased, because every one of my movies started to get bigger and bigger internationally. So it used to be that 1/3 was international box office and 2/3 was domestic. Then with me, it started going to be 50-50. So 50% domestic, 50% international, and eventually it became 1/3 domestic and 2/3 international. So imagine how much more money that it added because of that. And so this was a tremendous power. So I said to him, don't ever assume that everyone will know about the movie. I said, you got to go there. You got to show your face. The people, the journalists like to shake your hand. They like to sit down on a round table with all of their mics sticking out, the 10 leading radio programs of that country. They sit all there on the table. You're the 11th person that sits there, and now you're telling them stories about the movie. I said, and they go back to their radio stations. I have an exclusive interview with Will Smith, and he's coming up with this movie. It is hot. He looks fantastic. Great actor. And all that. I say, hey, how can it hurt? But do it. Just promote yourself internationally and go from country to country. And he said, thank you for this really great advice. Because if the studio would have said that to me, I would have just said, but they just want to use me.
Yeah.
He says, but you saying it, I buy in. I believe it. And he has been thankful ever since because of that.
Yeah. It's great advice. It's great advice.
Yeah, but it's you got to always let people know that there's nothing sleazy about the marketing, and there's so many actors always feel like it's beneath them to go out and sell the movie. And I tell them, I said, look, no matter what you do, if you're a painter and you paint great paintings, or if you're a musician and you want to promote an album, or if you're a movie actor and you promote your movie, I said, you have to do that because it's the only way people will know about it. The more you do and the better you do it, and to actually say the right things about the movie that is snappy, that really makes people curious when it goes, that's what it's all about. It's an art by itself. Not just the acting is an art, but the selling is an art as well.
Yeah. What I love about what you're saying, it's, for me as well, I only moved to LA 5 years ago, and I feel like I can be quite audacious and, driven as well. And so when I'm listening to you, what I always find it's interesting because the most successful people in the world, they have this audacity in that they already see it as reality. And everyone else, because it's so audacious, people are trying to catch up or they can't really see it, they can't figure it out. And you almost have to have that trust that you know where it can go and how big it can get. Having actually achieved all your goals, becoming the biggest bodybuilder of all time, going further, becoming this huge movie star, you just said that you had to go to educate people at one point that you even were a movie star. I think you've been good at redefining yourself and re-educating people about who you are, from bodybuilding to movies to obviously Governor of California. How does it feel to have lived out so many of your visions that you saw so clearly as that young man in Austria? How does that actually feel?
Well, to be honest with you, I always say to people, I would never switch my life with anyone's life, no matter who it is. Because I think that I am the most privileged person in the world. I mean, it's like to be able to live this many types of lives, to live the life of an athlete, of an amateur, of a professional, to really get the inside scoop. Because when you get the inside scoop of one profession, of one sport, you pretty much, because you hang out with the top football players, with Joe Namath and all of those guys in the 70s, and with George Foreman and Muhammad Ali. So you get to know really the inside of all sports, basically. And I think to learn everything about sports, to then learn everything about entertainment, to be now with the greatest of the greatest. I mean, imagine that I still met people like Frank Sinatra and Bob Hope, Sammy Davis Jr., Dean Martin, and all of those guys. The guy that trained me in comedy was Milton Berle, and all these old-timer guys, Jimmy Stewart. I mean, the list goes on, Lucille Ball. The list goes on and on and on. To meet all of these people, to work with them, to do photo shoots with them, to go to parties with them, to be at dinner with them, at charity events with them. I mean, it's really staggering to have this kind of experience. And then to travel around the world and to meet all these political leaders, from Gorbachev and every president in the United States, from Ronald Reagan to Jimmy Carter to George Bush and to everyone. The list goes on and on and on. Clinton and all those guys, all the way Nixon. I mean, everyone I met and talked to and hung out with and learned from. Mandela. So this is like, I mean, who has the privilege to do that and to travel around the Middle East and to do the things that people say you can't do, like to go from an Arab country to Israel or from Israel there. I hop back and forth all over the place, from Iraq to Jordan to Israel to Kuwait. I mean, everywhere. And, visiting the American soldiers over there and to be there. I mean, it's staggering, this kind of life. And then to go into the political arena and then to figure out what makes really a city or a state or a country run and tick, and what kind of players do you need, and how do you negotiate with all of these people, and how do you bring Democrats and Republicans together, and how do you come up with your own vision of how things should work? Because very quickly, I was a hardcore Republican, but very quickly I realized that that's not where the action is. The action is not with one party. That America is Democrats and Republicans declined to state independence together. And so that's the team. And as a team together, we can do great things. But if you start splitting the team, you start falling apart. It's like any football team or basketball team. So I said to myself, the action is, Arnold, bringing them together. Don't insult the Democrats. Don't insult anybody. Bring them together. And let's be a public servant rather than a party servant. And so that was my new theme. I was so proud of myself. Maybe 5,000 other politicians have talked about this. Yeah. But I mean, Obama said there's a blue state, no red state, there's only the United States. But there's a bogus lines, really. I mean, it sounds good, but I mean, the reality is different. So you really have to show leadership quality, and you really have to kind of make an effort to bring both of them together, and to be not afraid to say to the Democrats, as a Republican, I need your help. But together, we can solve this problem. I cannot do alone healthcare reform as a Republican. I need the Democrats. I need everybody. So this is the kind of things, or building infrastructure, doing anything in this state. It was our best work we did together. So I cannot give any party a credit. I have to give the credit to the politicians and to the people. And the people really enjoyed that when Democrats and Republicans got together and campaigned together for propositions, to vote for the certain propositions and all of that. So I was very, very privileged to be able to do all of those things, and to have millions of people listen to you and vote for you. And that, of course, goes to another chapter and another subject in a book, which is, give something back to the community, because we are not self-made people. I talk about this at great length in the book, as people so many times call me a self-made man. I know what you're talking about, but I always want to make clear at the same time, I'm not a self-made man. I was created by my mother and my father. I was created by my teachers, by my coaches, by my bodybuilding champions, that they were my idols. And Joe Weider, that brought me to America, Eric Morris, who was my acting coach, Chuck Nicholson, that recommended this acting coach. So all of these people had a tremendous amount. My wife did help me in every step of the way, with the kids. My kids were really helpful in my career. So I'm a product of all of that. And so I think it's important that when we recognize that we have gotten the help, that we therefore give help back. So that's why you have to ask yourself the question, okay, now, if everyone helped me to be where I am, how can I not go out and help? Whom? Who can I help? What can I help them with? And I talk about it in a book that my father-in-law, Sergeant Shriver, had this great line at the university speech at Yale, where he said, don't look always in a mirror. Don't look at yourself. Destroy that mirror. You will be able to look beyond that mirror, and then you will see the millions of people that need your help. And so this is what it's all about, is to not just look at yourself or be self-consumed. Yes, you can be, but don't forget ever that there's a lot of people out there that need your help. And even though when people say, well, what can I do? I'm a nobody. I don't have any money. That's bogus. It's an excuse right off the top that I don't want to do anything. Because when you see Hawaii burning down to the ground, there's a lot of things that everyone can do. But just taking some food and bringing it to those poor folks, bringing some clothing, going out and going to some fundraising and bring a few dollars to them. Whatever it is, you can do something. Or to go into some inner city school and to help with an after school program and to help kids learn how to read, especially since, in America now, we have so many students that where English is a second language, to help them to learn English and all this stuff. So there's endless amount of things. I just always felt that I have to be all out. I remember when Rudy Giuliani called me, when he was mayor of New York, he said, oh my God, our buildings came down and we are creating a Twin Tower fund. Can you send $1 million? I said, yeah, you got it tomorrow. In 2 seconds, I didn't even think about it, So that's what you do when we needed masks. When COVID broke out in Los Angeles, the hospitals didn't have any masks. So I immediately put in $1 million towards a fund that we put together to raise $8 million and then to get masks from all over the world, and especially from Asian countries. And so we can supply them with masks and gowns and with gloves and with ventilators and stuff like that. There was a company called Flexport that was within days got us the masks, even though the government said there are no masks around, we can't get any masks. So, these are things like that, or it doesn't matter if it's an earthquake or if this or that, you go out and you reach out, and that's why I'm involved in after-school programs. That's why I was involved in Special Olympics, in being a trainer and a coach for Special Olympians to help them with winning medals and becoming champions and all this stuff. So that's what life is all about, to receive and to give.
Well said, Arnold. Well said. And definitely more notes in the book for anyone who wants to dive into some of those stories. But Arnold, we end every episode with a final 5. So these are a fast 5 where you have to answer each question in 1 word or 1 sentence maximum. So these are your final 5. The first question is, what is the best advice you've ever heard or received?
Believe in yourself.
Second question, what is the worst advice you've ever heard or received?
It can't be done.
Good answers. Question number 3, you've mastered so many things in your life. What are you currently trying to master?
Bring all of my talents together into one. The show business, fitness, and politics all into one, and make that be my new kind of vision and drive to help the world.
Wow. Okay, I'm going to scrap the final. What does that look like? That's fascinating. What does that look like right now in your mind as you develop it? You can use more than 1 sentence.
I want to be out there and help with environmental issues because I learned about that during my governorship. I want to be out there and help with healthcare issues, with aging issues, with fitness issues, with entertaining issues, and because it's important to entertain people. So all of those kind of things. So I have the Schwarzenegger Institute, where we deal with a lot of those various different issues and policies to make it a better world. And I have my environmental conference in Vienna every year where the world comes together, 80, 90 countries come together, and we talk about the environment and how to make this a fossil fuel free world and reduce pollution so we don't have 7 million people die every year because of pollution.
Beautiful. I can't wait to see the impact you have in that space. Question number 4 has 2 parts to it. What is your biggest personal success and what is your biggest personal failure?
Well, I think that my biggest personal success is to be able to do the things that I wanted to do, that I visualize them and turn them into reality. And I think my biggest failure, obviously, is my marriage thing, that from a personal point of view and from a professional point of view, I've had many movies go in the toilet. I've lost bodybuilding competitions and powerlifting competitions and all that stuff. So I had plenty of failures. It's always important to bring that up because people should know that you never will be able to go through life without failures. Failures make us learn. Failures make you stronger. Pain makes you stronger. So I think all of that is good. Yeah,
let's address both of those because it's so true. Like on the outside, like you said, people can say, so privileged, you met the presidents, you did this, you did that, you've, all the wins. When I'm looking around this room, like everything's iconic, nothing's unrecognizable across the whole world. It's all recognizable. But did you ever feel the pressure when things started to go well of like, God, the next movie's got to be bigger and the next movie's got to be bigger? Did you feel that, or did you just you were just loving it so much that you just kept building, and if it went wrong, that it didn't hurt you that much?
I never really felt that much pressure, probably about anything, to be honest with you, because I knew what I wanted, and I never really fell for this thing of what did the people expect me to do. So I create my vision. And when everyone says it's impossible, I go after it with vengeance. It's like I go all out, 100%, and it gives me joy. And what is great about it is that every time that you accomplish something really big, you see and become aware of other things that are new challenges that you didn't even think about.
Yes.
I mean, did I ever think about that I will fight for the environment? No. But because of the governorship, this is like the thing I talk about in the book about Hillary, who climbs Mount Everest, and he's up there, and all of a sudden he sees another peak to be climbed, right? And he says, "There's the next one." So there's the same thing. I go and win the governorship. I go in there. I start working on the governorship and all the different policies, and I'm meeting all these scientists and experts, and they talk about how many people die here because of pollution, and we can do something about it. And I dive into that. It's a new peak. Oh my God, no one has really explored that. Forget the 19% of renewables. We have to have 50% renewables. Forget about, reducing greenhouse gases by 5%. We have to reduce it by 25%, and we have to do it by 2020. And so you set big goals. So this is the new peak that you're climbing, and you go all out for that. Then when you get there, then you see another peak beyond that. So this is what is fun, and this makes my life rich. That is always something new and different. And I tell you that I also learn when I, for instance, listen to you, because you come from a totally different world, right? So you have a different spin on things. So that when I listen to this, I say, oh, that's an interesting way of looking at it. And so I think we have to learn from one another. And so I think that you and I, we have a lot in common anyway, because otherwise you wouldn't be sitting here.
Yeah, definitely.
Right? I mean, to think about it, it's not just that I want to be having one of the most popular podcasts, but you have to be a curious son of a bitch to go and to be really good in what you do.
Yeah.
And this is what I noticed about your podcast. You're really curious, a natural curiosity.
Thank you.
And I think that is, but you have to have it. You have to have curiosity. It shows in your eyes. It shows in everything when you ask a question and all this. It's like when you see journalists, which I hate. They have like a piece of paper and they say, "Okay, very interesting." He says, "Now let me ask you another question. You one time said this is, and then how do you feel that they read it off the paper, and then when you answer, they don't even look at you in the eyes." They look at the paper for the next question, right? So I didn't detect any of that from you. I mean, every question came without looking at anything because you're curious. And so I think I just wanted to mention that.
Thank you, Arnold. I appreciate that. And it means a lot coming from you. And I am curious because I grew up as a fan who didn't. So that's one thing.
Yeah.
But I think I'm even more curious because you chose to write a book about being useful and life lessons. And I think that world is what I gravitate towards, because I think learning from the greats is all we have. And I think when we ignore to learn from the greats, that's when we have to make our own mistakes for no reason. We can avoid so many. So, no, I am very curious about you. And I think you're also a fantastic storyteller, so that helps.
Well, thank you.
You get into so much detail and so many examples and everything. So it's brilliant.
Well, thank you. I tell you, it was really fun doing this book, because I really had to kind of drill down and think about a lot of the things that comes natural for me. To tell stories about, because each one of the rules, you want to be able, even the sub rules and the sub rules, you want to be able to tie it to a story so that people can relate to. Like I was talking about infrastructure. You can talk to people about infrastructure all you want. They can relate to it. But as soon as you tie it to getting stuck in traffic, making it to the recital in the school, and you come late an hour because of the traffic and all this, then they can relate to that. And the same is with any of the rules. I kind of had fun doing it. It was sometimes frustrating because you want to do 10 rules, and the publisher then says, no, you can only do 7, because this book should only have 268 pages rather than 350 pages, and all of this crazy stuff you go through. But it was a really, really great process, and never in my wildest dreams did I ever think that I would occupy this space at all. And it really happened just totally coincidentally, where more and more people, when you finish with the governorship, I was asked to do public speaking engagements, like ex-presidents and stuff like that. And so I'm traveling around. I think one time someone said, "Can you pump up our crowd? We have like 1,000, real estate people. We want you to just pump them up." So you do a little bit of success story.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden it took off like wildfire. every one of the public speaking engagements they've had since then, they want to go and have me talk about success, and the rules to success and all of that stuff. So it's like something I didn't even think about, because I always was a motivator. If it's the Special Olympics or for after school programs, or to be just my buddies around in the gym that became my training partners, because I always have this kind of energy, right?
Yeah.
Come on, let's do a set. You can do another set. Well, wait a minute, you're stopping with 10 reps. Give me 5 more reps. Let it pain. Let it give pain. And you just pump. So I have this energy. So I never thought that this would be used then for seminars and eventually for a book like this. It's like crazy.
No, it's
where
fantastic.
life takes you.
Yeah, it's fantastic. It's beautiful to see it through your eyes and through your lens, and for us all to dream as well. And I have one final question for you. And actually, before I ask it, when you said we have a lot in common, there's so many different parallels that I'll tell you later, because when I was listening to you, I have a very different life, but so many similar lessons I've picked up along the way. And I think as humans, that's what brings us together. We may not have the same life story.
Right.
We don't grow up in the same places. We don't have the same parents, but you pick up the same messages from the world and the same lessons from the world.
Right.
So the fifth and final question I want to ask you is, if you could create one law that everyone in the world had to follow, what would it be?
Oh, that's an interesting question. Maybe to get off fossil fuels. That we have to use alternative energy. If it is nuclear, with producing energy itself, if it is for cars, electric or hydrogen, I just feel like if we have 7 million people die because of pollution, I think by having a law like that and eventually make it stick, I think that we could save those lives. And this is like unlike more than any of the wars that they fought and any of the other disasters or anything like this. It's like so many people die because of pollution. So I mean, that's
huge.
One thing. Yeah. So I mean, then probably tomorrow morning I'll call you and say, I have another law.
Great. That's a great answer.
Yeah.
We've never had that one though.
Yeah.
We've never had that answer. So it's a brilliant answer. But you've been doing so much work I feel like you've been doing so much work in the plant-based space, with the documentaries on game changers, like climate change now you're talking about. Like, it seems like this has been like an immersion for you.
Well, we know it's here's another crazy one.
Yeah, go on.
It's all, my life is so insane.
I believe it.
No, but I mean, it's like, I'm working with this guy, Jim Cameron. I do Terminator 1. We become friends. We ride the motorcycle together. We hang out together. And then he does, Terminator 2, and he does other movies, and the Titanic, and Avatar and all this.
Yeah.
But he is an environmentalist. But when we did Terminator, I never knew that. And he never talked about it. So then I become governor. And now he goes and he says to me, I want to make you aware of that the power companies are still resisting the reverse metering. I say, reverse metering? What the hell are you talking about? He says, well, it's the thing, when you produce energy from solar and you produce too much, you want to put it back on the grid. That's reverse metering. And you get credit for it.
Wow.
So I walk away and I say to myself, how does Jim Cameron know about reverse metering and about that subject? Of course, it's very clear because he's a genius, right? And he just is, with technology and stuff like that, he's unbeatable.
Yeah.
So, but sure enough, I go in the office the next day in the governor's office and I said, look, guys, I want to talk a little bit about reverse metering. Oh, I'm so glad you bring this up because certain power companies are fighting us tooth and nail. They don't want to do reverse metering, but we want to pass a law. So we're telling the legislators to send us a bill so that you can sign it and blah, blah, blah. So this just gives you an example of what impact Jim Cameron had on me with issues that is way beyond, movies and stuff like that. Then he goes and says to me, I said to him, my doctor said to me, he says, I should get off meat. And they should only have once a week meat. And he says, well, hello, where have you been? I mean, I've been vegan for 5 years. So I said, what? And he says, I've been vegan for 5 years. I haven't eaten any meat for 5 years. You don't need meat to have it. And he goes crazy now, right? And he says, some of it, we're doing a documentary right now on the thing, on eating plant-based food. So all of a sudden, he's the expert. Now I sit down with him, and he's telling me for hours about plant-based food and how he can combine and create the right amino acids to create the right protein, and obviously how he can get strong. And now he lists the name of the athletes, boxers, wrestlers, weightlifters, UFC fighters, everything that are on plant-based food. Think about that. So now I got into it, and I was part of this documentary, right? Now I eat like maybe once a week meat. So I would say 70% at least to cut down my meat intake for health reasons. And it happens to be also for environmental reasons. As he explained, I say, Arnold, what do you think where most of the pollution comes from? More than from transportation comes from breeding livestock. So I say, are you kidding me? He says, no, read up on it. He says, I sent you some stuff. So I'm reading up on it. Sure enough, 28% of the pollution comes from breeding livestock. So he says, if people wouldn't eat meat, he says, and wouldn't have the animals being kind of like the wholesale, kind of like the vegetable protein goes into the animal, then they eat it and they chase it, then you eat the animal, you still get the plant-based food, but through the animal now. It's bullshit. We can do better than that.
Yeah.
Let's cut out the meat. It's just amazing how I get exposed to various different things in my life and make me passionate about ways that I couldn't even ever have planned. This kind of relationships and this kind of knowledge you could never plan on.
Yeah. And do you also have a meditation practice? Is that right?
I used to. In the 70s, there was a time when I got out of bodybuilding and into show business. And there was all kinds of things happening in the mid-70s. So I was doing my last year of competition in 1975 in South Africa, Mr. Olympia. So I was training for that. I was finishing off my movie Stay Hungry with Bob Rafelson and Sally Fields and Jeff Bridges, doing that. And I was at the same time going full blast into show business, taking acting classes, and investing my money in real estate. So I was, no matter which way I was turning, I was like scrambling. And at that point, I did not know much about how to isolate and just concentrate on one thing at a time. So I'm hanging out with this guy, this skinny rat, down on the beach. He's a transcendental meditation teacher, but he never talked about it. So I said to him, yeah, I feel frantic. I mean, it's like everything is so a little bit overwhelming for me. I'm doing this movie. I'm shooting the documentary, pumping on. I'm going to the competition. I'm finishing off Stay Hungry. I'm trying to do real estate and become a millionaire. I'm all over the place. He says, let me talk to you a little bit. Very calmly talks to me about it. And he says, why don't you come up to Westwood and take some transcendental meditation? He says, I cannot be a teacher even though I'm a teacher. I said, you're a teacher? Transcendental? Yeah. He said, but I cannot be a teacher, it's our rules. When you have friendship and stuff, if there's someone else, he says, but don't worry, I set you up with the right guy. So I go up there and I learn now about meditation. And as I got into it, I was then doing meditation like for months.
Wow.
Throughout the summer, that hectic summer. And when the summer was over, it wasn't that hectic anymore. So what I learned from meditation was, how to kind of like, first of all, rejuvenate the mind and to kind of disconnect the mind. But also what I learned was how to focus on one thing at a time and to just look at that with no peripheral vision so that nothing comes in, solve this, and then don't think about anything else, and then go over here and solve this. And then solve this, because he said you can never do all of it in one time anyway. And as soon as you single out things, it becomes much more approachable and much more doable. He said to me, I remember, he said, when you drive down on Venice Boardwalk with your bike, he says, you will look sometimes on a busy day and it will be all packed. He says it would look like you would not be able to go through this crowd because you're looking at the whole shot, the whole boardwalk, all the way down a mile, Venice. So it's overwhelming. He says, but if you go now with your bike slowly, you negotiate around the people, and all of a sudden you will find spaces where you can go, where you don't bump into anybody, and all of a sudden you're on the end of it, and it was totally doable because he took like one person at a time, kind of like bicycling around. He says, and that's the way it is with everything. He says, if you just look at it one thing at a time, you'll be able to solve any problem. And that's why he says you see people like the Pope that has obviously his daily routine, a big daily routine. But these guys, they get up at 5 o'clock in the morning, they work out for an hour and a half, very calmly, get that out of the way. Then they read newspapers like Pope John Paul. I remember he told me that he read newspapers in 6 different languages. So they read the newspapers. Then they get that done. Then they go and take a shower, and then they go and have the first meeting. So this is how they step by step they approach the day. And he says, the people that get done the most, you can load them up with even more responsibilities because they're very organized and very systematic in their approach. And so I've learned that. So now I've never really been that frantic again. But if I would become frantic, I would go right back into the meditation because I know now how to do it.
That's fantastic. Arnold, everyone who's been listening or watching, the book is called Be Useful, 7 Tools for Life. You can grab it right now. We're going to put the link in the comments and the caption so that you can order it right away. As you can tell, Arnold's a phenomenal storyteller. Inside of it are lessons, stories, and one of the things I definitely have in common with Arnold that I appreciate about him is how simple the ideas, how easy they are to digest. They're not complicated, and you don't have to learn something new. You can actually just sit there, take them in, listen, and all of a sudden you start going, wait a minute, it maybe is that easy. Maybe it is that simple. And I think that's something that we desperately need in today's world. So Arnold, I thank you for putting all your lessons into a book for us. I thank you for telling so many amazing stories.
And I signed 17,000 copies.
Wow.
Pages. Because now they send you the pages.
Yes.
So I'm getting these boxes with pages. Each box was 1,000 pages. And I said to myself, wait a minute now. First was like 14,000 for the American company. And then there was another 3,500 or 4,000 for the British company.
And they're going to be in bookstores?
Yes. What they do is, I think that the first of the books are all signed.
Yes.
So now people will, when they pre-order, they will buy signed books. I think that was the idea. So in the old days, that you would go to a bookstore and you would sign all the books yourself, and then you sit there for hours and hours, and after an hour you sign 100 books, right? Because you have to open up the book, and it's all slow. Now it's just pages. So I was just like signing. I was for 3 months. I was signing and signing and signing.
Yeah.
I mean, think about it. 17,000.
Yeah. I can relate.
It's crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy.
I never thought they'd have to do that many signatures.
I love it. Well, it's available now. Make sure you tag me and Arnold on any social media platforms you're using, whether it's TikTok, Instagram, X, or wherever you are. I'd love to see what resonated with you, what stuck with you. Keep sharing those posts across social media because I love seeing what is going to stay with you, what you're going to practice, what are you going to try, what are you going to implement in your life from this episode that will help you become happier, healthier, or more healed. Thank you again, Arnold.
Thank you.
Thank you.